Life comes at you quick. How do you prepare yourself for a career that you can't even imagine yet? That's what Cam and I will delve into each episode on future-proofing your career. Cam, a retired professor, memoirist, and CPA, shares insights from his dynamic professional life, while I, a recent graduate and a young professional, voice the concerns of the next professional generation as we try to navigate a rapidly changing market. Learn how to arm yourself with an open and informed mentality that will take your career to the next level. I'm Lexi. So, Cam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, Lexi, great to be with you here on our first podcast together. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us. A bit about me, Cam, is I'm a business professor, soon to be retiring. I'm retiring from the university system, but I'm not retiring from teaching. And there's a lot of things I still want to teach. Writing is one of those things. I'm an author. I've been a professional writer for about 25 years, mostly in the genre of prescriptive nonfiction, where I wrote some corporate strategy books on how to formulate your strategy, how to measure and manage your strategy, those kind of books. And then recently I've delved into the genre of narrative nonfiction, which is the memoir genre. And I'll talk more about that in future episodes. Another thought about me is I'm a public speaker and a speaking coach. I love teaching people and coaching them on how to become better professional speakers. In fact, that's one of the most rewarding roles of my career, has been coaching people and seeing them develop and seeing the results. And I think I'll leave it at that, Lexi. That's a bit of an introduction, and certainly the folks will find out more about me as the podcast rolls on. So, Lexi, I'm going to turn it back over to you to talk a bit about yourself.
For sure. One important fact about me to know is that I'm newly graduated. So I left my Master's of English only a year ago, but I've had a super exciting and dense introduction to the working world. So that's been amazing. During my undergrad, I started a business for editing and helping people and businesses through the writing process. So that's been such a fulfilling experience for me. Now my 9 to 5 is as a cybersecurity technical writer, which was a huge learning curve after a master's of English, but also super rewarding. And then I'm also a professional editor. So that's how Cam and I connected and started this working relationship. I helped him with his memoir, and that was just also an amazing experience. I think most importantly, rather than just talking about the resume bullet points, is there's been a lot of philosophies and beliefs driving all of my choices in the past year, and how I prioritize things and all of that. The first one being that I'm super, super passionate about knowing what my priorities are and sticking to them. I think it is so easy now, especially with all of the external influence we receive, to let work life and home life bleed into each other with remote career paths and all of that. And so I've really, really stood strong in my position of maintaining separate spaces for each part of my life so that I have room for everything that I love. And then also, one little thing that I always try to remind myself as well is that it only takes a few seconds of bravery to start something. So Cam can speak to this based on our working relationship of how much of a planner I am. I need everything to be so rigid and scheduled, but I try really hard to remind myself to take a few seconds and just say yes to something. It only takes 1 second, and then you can deal with the follow through of that later. So those two things, knowing my priorities and sticking with them, and being brave for new opportunities, has been so helpful in this past year. Cam, what are yours? What do you think? What's driven your career? What do you reflect back on and see that you've done without maybe even noticing?
Yeah, so just to pick up on your bravery and courage theme, that's something we'll talk about a bit on the show, is having the courage to just take that leap, see what happens. Usually will work out if you work hard enough at it. And if it doesn't, failure is a key ingredient of success. And that's, again, one of the themes of the show, is it's okay to fail. It's what you learn from it. That's the tuition that you've paid. To answer Lexi's questions about my beliefs and philosophies, I just shared one of them, is that failure is a key ingredient of success. So we'll expand on that in future episodes. I look at life as simply an obstacle course, and there's always obstacles popping up. Some are harder to navigate around or under or through. But we need to keep trying, and that's where problem solving comes in. And we'll talk a lot about problem solving on the show, because every obstacle is just a challenge that needs to be leaned into one way or another. Continuous improvement, I think, is a good life philosophy to adopt. So in business philosophy, there's something called continuous improvement or Kaizen, where it basically means just get 1% better all the time. So take 1,000 processes and make them all 1% better, and now you have a better running company. And so we're going to apply the same type of thinking to some life philosophy about just becoming a little better at this, a little better at that, and how that can start to build a career and build a resume. The show is a lot about future proofing, and future proofing, as far as we're concerned, is one, knowing who you want to become, and two, moving the needle a bit each week toward that version of yourself. So those are the big philosophies I follow. We'll talk about purpose a bit on the show as well, but I'm going to keep it at that high level for now, Lexi, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Another really unique thing about the podcast moving forward, and what we're hoping to achieve all in all, is we want to bring together a bunch of different perspectives. So between Cam and I, we're at very different points in our career, and so we have really interesting and sometimes contrasting perspectives on things, and we're hoping to highlight those, find common ground, and develop these really well-rounded ideas about careers and moving forward. And then, yeah, to repeat what Cam's talked about a lot, is that imperfect progress is valuable. So there's value in failing, and there's value in trying things and maybe not succeeding. So we really, really want to highlight that as we go through all of our different episodes and little tidbits. We'll share some of failures of our own and how they've turned into great things, or maybe not, but what we've learned from them and how to use that. So Cam, I put together a this or that game about careers to kind of highlight maybe our different contrasting perspectives on career, where we're at, and then also find out where we're similar. Are you down to play?
Yeah, this sounds like a great idea.
So I'll say two dichotomies that exist in the working world, and you just say which one you would prefer. And if you want to add a little bit about why, you're totally welcome to. Okay, so the first one, this or that, hustle culture or work-life balance?
It's work-life balance if I have to choose one, but there are periods of your career where hustle culture is actually really beneficial to you in the long run. So overall, Lexi, it's the work-life balance. But you got to not be afraid of long periods of hustle as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think as much as I preach work-life balance, I do think if someone's looking at me from an external perspective, they'd put me in hustle culture for now, but we'll see how long it lasts. All right, this or that, overtime or strict end times?
Overtime. Things go awry sometimes, and to leave at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I'll give you an example in construction. Okay, if some bonehead mixes cement at 4:59 and you've got a big pile of wet cement, you can't just everyone walk away and go home. Now, because if you did that, you come back the next day to a wheelbarrow full of hard cement. Sometimes overtime is absolutely necessary. There's urgent situations, and there are certainly emergency situations. So I would lean on the overtime for that one flexibly.
Yeah, I think we do align. I didn't think we would when you said overtime at first, but I think we do align. And I add a little bit as well that I'm very 9 to 5, strict end time with my day job. But that's not to say that I don't pull overtime for my passion projects or side hustles as well. So my
Right.
work hours are a lot more flexible in that way. Whereas, some corporate jobs, especially for someone like me starting out in the career, nothing that I'm doing is maybe important enough in that area to warrant overtime.
I just wanted to add a thought about overtime is when I was in the corporate world, I was always very objectives focused. So if you got the work done by 5 o'clock, great. But if you needed to stay an extra hour to get it done, please do that. But you've completed the objective now. So the next day, maybe a longer break, a longer lunch. So kind of make that hour back up to the person when it's less crucial. So that's the kind of flexibility and objectives focus I think that would be beneficial for most corporations.
Yeah, and we're seeing that with flex hours now too, which is what I have at my 9 to 5, which is amazing. So,
Right, right.
okay, this or that, working for someone or being an entrepreneur or your own boss.
Solopreneur for me.
Yeah.
Solopreneur. I can work with people. I've had difficulty in the past working for people. I'm a solopreneur, so even when I do work for someone, it's usually in a subcontracting kind of role.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm going with working for someone for right now, just because, at 23, there's only so much capital uh, to be your own boss and all of that. And sometimes there's not brain power for it when you're balancing all the newness of the working world. But that's not to say I don't feel like I have a million business ideas I'd love to follow up on, and I'm slowly chipping away at, I think.
I'm just going to add there, Lexi, that's a good example of how you and I actually share the same philosophy, but because we're two generations apart, me being a Gen X and you're a Gen Z, I I said, solopreneur because I have the business experience and I've been out in the real world for a while. But to your point, in your 20s, absolutely you have to work for someone. I mean, I shouldn't say absolutely. If you watch Shark Tank and that, there are certainly a lot of young entrepreneurs out there. But for most of us, certainly the 20s was spent working for other people. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and it maintains the work-life balance. Like, it'd be amazing to go off on your own venture, but at this age, if you want to be able to pay your rent and all that stuff and still have social life, it's work for someone else for a bit. It's okay.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So this or that, living to work or working to live.
Working to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's to spend too much time working unless it's passion projects and they're a bit of a separate animal. And what I mean by that, let me explain that, is I put in a lot of 70 and 80-hour weeks in my life. But when 40 of those hours are corporate and the other 40 are passionate things I love doing, like I was mentioning, coaching, public speaking skills, or teaching university when I was young, those kind of things, it didn't feel like work. So the 80 hours I'm talking about actually felt more like 40, even though, the body was exhausted.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's exactly the answer I was going to give too. Like,
Okay.
definitely I've picked my 9 to 5 to be working to live, but I do pull about 60-hour work weeks right now, and those are not completely corporate in any way. And those ones, I enjoy the work, so it doesn't feel the same exactly. So, do you think it's more important to pursue a paycheck or pursue a passion where you are right now in your life?
Pursue a passion. There's no question
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, it's I'm at a place in my life where I've done my corporate thing. I'm really proud of it. I've done my university thing. I'm really proud of all the work I've done. It's not like I'm trying to get away from that stuff. It's just more that I'm pivoting toward that kind of field that you mean, where I'm pursuing passions. Absolutely.
Yeah. Agreed. I'm at a spot right now where I'm happy to pursue a paycheck, but I'm not sure how happy I'd be to be doing it if I didn't also have other opportunities to have a creative outlet. I think I would be struggling. Um,
Right. Just a thought too is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably are setting loose longer term plans to get away from the paycheck type feel and have more agency over, your career. Is that fair to say?
yeah, I think so. I'm pretty good with managing things right now to set myself up for future success. So
Right.
yeah, I'm I'm in the grunt work bit right now, and then
Yeah.
hopefully shifting gears.
Just a
But
quick thought I should point out is that a lot of paycheck jobs are great jobs. So, not trying to put a bad spin on paycheck jobs. I've had some great rewarding jobs where I learned so much. And, it's corporate world, so everything isn't perfect. But net, it was rewarding. And having the safety and insurance of that paycheck is certainly beneficial, especially young in your career.
Yeah, well, and I have to say, my 9 to 5, I love it. I've learned so much. It was a whole learning curve for me when I left school, and it's a phenomenal team, a phenomenal company. I really enjoy it. It's not
Right.
passion, but the days do not feel long. It doesn't feel, disastrous to have to go in. So yeah, for sure.
That's
Okay.
great. Yeah.
This or that, job hopping or company loyalty?
Job hopping.
Yeah.
I have seen in my career people leave the company and then come back in order to get the promotion they deserved in the first place.
Yep. That
So they
seems
had
to,
to leave the company and then come back at a higher level.
yes.
And this is what happened to me in the 90s. I won't say the place, but in the corporate world, some of them have grade levels, right? And I came in like underemployed basically at a grade 7 just to prove myself.
Yeah.
And I guess I did a decent job because 2 years later, I was promoted from a grade 7 to a grade 11. And so my point is, I was making salary X and I was hiring people making 20 grand more than me to work for me.
Yeah.
And so if people don't see that as a broken system that frustrates employees and don't fix things like that, that's just part of the reason people don't want to go to work in the corporate world.
Yeah. Well, I think exactly what you just said is going to align with a lot of millennial and Gen Z mentalities right now. It seems like company loyalty is not much of a thing right now. I would say I'm happy to stay with a company as long as they're aligning with my priorities that I talked about earlier.
Right.
And until those priorities are, jeopardized, then I'm happy to have company loyalty. I love the company I'm at. But yeah, if they can't meet those needs anymore, yeah, I have no problem jumping ship either.
Well, loyalty is a two-way street, right? If you go to work and get the feeling like you could be let go tomorrow,
Yeah.
or you're going to be humiliated in front of whoever, like I said, loyalty is a two-way street. So you got to give it to get it.
Agreed.
Just my thoughts.
Yeah. This or that, risky business or slow and steady in terms of advancing your career.
For me, it's been risky business, but I've seen people with the slow and steady.
Yeah.
Slow and steady is actually a preference. Like that would be the one I would recommend to people to just keep building on what you have. But risky sometimes, sometimes people have faith and they'll ask you to jump to a new level that you never thought you were going to get. Like I'll give you a quick example. I teach at Royal Military College and I was learning French because it's a federal university. So at Royal Military College, you get more opportunities if you can speak and teach in French. So I was learning French and I was brought in for a meeting and I was asked, do you want to start teaching courses in French next year? So it was about 15 or 16 months from the time I was asked. And I said the only thing I thought of, may we? Absolutely, I'll do that. I'll be ready. I can do that. The thing was, I was just barely past the introductory stage of my friend. So I took a real risk in saying, yes, I can do this, because it could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
I worked so hard and talk about 80-hour weeks, but when I'm learning other languages, that's complete passion,
Mhm.
learning work. So a lot of 80-hour weeks, but I learned French well enough to teach it. I'm not great at it, but I did figure it out. But that kind of risk isn't for everyone. And so be careful with that. And just to summarize and answer your question, slow and steady is probably the preferable recommended route. But that said, if big risky opportunities come, give them some thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I'm a slow and steady through and through,
Mm.
but when things come up and there are opportunities, I like that one belief that I said at the beginning, like if there's an opportunity and I just need a second of bravery to say yes or make a call or push publish or any of those things, I'm gonna remind myself to do that and I'll deal with the follow through later, because once the ball is rolling, it's already gone. Like just you just have to chase it and keep going. um
Yeah.
I did the same thing with my business. Is I didn't know anything about building a business, hiring people, building a website, any of that stuff. And I just, I'll figure it out as I go. Okay, we got two more. So first
Okay.
one, this or that, enjoying your youth or early retirement.
Enjoying your youth,
Yeah,
for
me too.
sure.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, and then investing in yourself and your brand or saving for traditional goals.
Oh, investing in yourself,
Yeah,
your brand, because the reason is I think that investment, I mean, the term investment suggests it, that
yeah,
there'll be a return on it. And I think that return, for me anyway, the return would be higher for me to invest in brand than it would be to save up for later.
yeah. I found a lot of sneaky ways to build a brand without putting forward a lot of monetary investments.
Right.
Um, but wholly, the if you count time as capital, my time investment into building myself, or there's been a huge investment in brand, but then my money's being saved for traditional goals. So
Yeah, you figured out a way to wisely and quietly build a value proposition
yeah.
without a lot of spending money and splash, you know. So good for you. We'll talk more about that in future episodes.
Okay, so that's the last of them for this or that. We just wanted to do that as a little bit of an introduction to our beliefs. Cam, I'm going to turn it over to you. You have a list for us.
Right. So my exercise for the end of this podcast, I'm calling it When I Was 23. And that's the reason for that is Lexi's 23 and I'm a lot older than that. And I just wanted to not highlight the age difference between us, but rather just to show what would have been going through my mind when I was Lexi's age. And it's very different in terms of the world back then. So let me just jump into when I was 23. So that's 1990. And the two terms I would use, Lexi, are undecided and unguided. And
Nice.
what I mean is, I just finished university, so zero work experience. A recession had just begun, and there's no work for someone without experience. Every job that I would have normally applied for said minimum of 5 years experience. So I actually found work in a factory. So that was quite a hit to my ego, you know, to work so hard in university and come out and work in a factory. But I did it because I needed to, and it was a great little job. So I have no complaints about that. But I do understand the frustration of finishing university, or you know, even finishing high school or college and not knowing next steps. But sometimes you got to create a break for yourself. So something else I did that year, 1990, there was a high school teacher shortage, believe it or not, in Ontario. There was actually less teachers than they needed. So people like me with a university degree and a bit of teaching experience, what my teaching was actually karate. I used to teach karate. So with my university degree and karate, I got on the list for supply teachers. And what I did once I got on that supply teacher list is I marched into my old high school and announced, "Hey, I'd like to come and teach here." And I got a job teaching at my old high school for 2 years. So that was fun. And I didn't realize I liked teaching until I did that. And so I kind of fell backwards into what would become my career. So that was a really neat experience. But back to the bad times, uh, 2 years later, now there are enough teachers. So I was cut from the teacher list, and there's still a recession and I still have no real experience. So I was struggling again. So that's kind of how my age of 23, 24 kind of went. So, but that's enough about me personally. I want to share just a couple of big picture things about the world when I was 23. So the year I turned 23 was the year the Berlin Wall came down. So the Berlin Wall that year was actually up, and then it collapsed and the Soviet Union collapsed. And that made the Cold War officially over. And get this, I was naive enough when I was 23 to think when the Berlin Wall collapsed and the Soviet Union was gone, I thought we were going to have world peace for the rest of my life. It just seems so overly optimistic now. But you know, we grew up watching movies talking about nuclear war, movies with mushroom clouds. We just the 80s especially were just a dark cloud of who's going to push the button. It was called what we called a push button war, would have been a nuclear war. Anyway, enough about the doom and gloom of 1990. Here are a few funny ones from when I was 23. Two brand new shows in their first year, Seinfeld and The Simpsons. The movie Home Alone, which is like a classic, right? The movie Home Alone, brand new in theaters that Christmas, that year. And get this, you'll love this. When I was 23, there was no such thing as email, internet, or voicemail. Can you imagine?
Well,
And just one more quick one, and then we're going to wrap it up. But this one surprises even me when I think about it. When I was 23, so in the 90s, I could drive back and forth to the US and not be asked for ID at the border.
what
I
the
would drive, I would be driving to Florida and you get to the border. Where are you going? Florida for a couple of weeks. Okay, have fun. Or what they would ask you, what's your citizenship? Canadian. Okay, have a good time. Coming back.
yeah.
Citizenship, Canadian. Do you have anything to declare? Yeah, a case of beer. Okay, welcome back. That was it for Canada and US. I know that foreign exchange students would tell me horror stories about their grief at the American border, but for Canadians, it's like it was just a porous back and forth thing. And I bring all of that up just to show how polarized the world has become in those years. The years, I naively thought we were done with war in this world, and now the world's more polarized than it's ever been. And I want to finish on that thought to say that this podcast that Lexi and I are doing, this is about getting away from that polarization. We're trying to bring a community together. And I mentioned I'm a Gen X, so I'm much older than Lexi, who's a Gen Z. But together, our perspectives and philosophies, I think, are going to be really beneficial for people to use as food for thought. That's really what this is a food for thought kind of show. And with that, Lexi, I'm going to turn it over to you for final thoughts and then to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Cam. I think there's going to be a lot of room for interesting discussion. A little heads up that Cam and I are not against disagreeing with each other and having some little debates here and there. We hope to have those and see what comes out of them. So that should be something to look forward to. And we are interested in hearing feedback and what's on all of your minds about the career that you have ahead of you or maybe the career you have behind you, and any insights in that. We want to build a community, like Cam said, and open dialogue really is our biggest thing, because Cam and I just love to chat. So we're going to keep doing that, and hopefully we can get some other voices in here and see how this all unfolds. We will have some other episodes following this one that look at more specific topics about career and how to handle yourself and handle all the obstacles that are to come. And I'll give the perspective of planning ahead, and Cam will be more reflexive, and we'll go from there. So thank you so much for listening. If you made it this far, if you clicked on it at all, that's super exciting for us. And we'll talk to you in the next episode. See you, Cam.
Cheers, Lexi.